So like if you don't have the ability to understand the hour that your brand starts to lose money, you are doing it wrong. The technology exists today for you to be able to know that. And so once you know that, then you need to go and make changes. And the answer a lot of times is just to stop spending.
Drew Fallon is the former CFO and COO of Mad Rabbit, and more to the point of this conversation is the CEO and founder of Iris, financial software for e-commerce. We're going to talk about what it is. Really what we're going to talk about is the financial lessons you need to know to operate your e-commerce business. What mistakes are you probably making if you're anything like the other people that Drew sees with his big financial brain of his? We're going to talk all things e-com finance. That's really the point of it. I don't need to draw it out. Let's jump in. What's up, Drew? How are you?
Doing well, Andrew. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Man, my pleasure. I'm a longtime Twitter follower. You probably don't even know that, but I've like, it's like you
No, I know that. No, I know that. I've been looking at your stuff for a long time too. We've never even met before this right now, so it's great to finally talk live too.
Well, it's just like that guy's smart. Let's talk to him. So you can just tell over a long enough time, over enough tweets, you can tell when somebody is smart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can tell who you actually like.
Yeah. Cool, man. So hey, I gave the intro to tell people your bona fides, but what tell people a little bit about Mad Rabbit and what you did there first, and then talk about what you're doing now. Because we actually haven't talked about this, but I have a number of e-commerce friends who are mutual friends of yours who have leaned on you for a very specific set of help in their business. That includes the guys at Pretty Boy. That includes my friend Sarah Moret from Curie. Both of them, all of whom have been on the show before, and all of whom I've hung out with before in IRL. So everybody speaks glowingly about the influence you've had on their business, which is awesome. But yeah, give people a little bit of your journey, and then we could talk about a little bit more about kind of what you're doing now and why I thought to have you on the show.
Yeah. I've been in this world for probably 8 years now. I started like back in the day, like when it was fun back in like 2018. I think it's 2016 really. Was when I first started doing like drop shipping and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then eventually I got pretty involved with Mad Rabbit as the founding CFO COO there. Worked there for 4.5 years or so. At that brand, I was leading all of the financial infrastructure. So I think of that as like the FP&A motions, the accounting stuff. I was also in charge of a lot of the demand planning, logistics, et cetera. Also led all the fundraising efforts for Mad Rabbit. So we were Series A backed. Company raised about 20 million total in combined debt and equity, and so um, had a really good time growing Mad Rabbit. It's an awesome brand. We had a ton of fun. I think where Iris kind of got really even more exciting for me as an individual was just sort of like the applications that technology are now enabling, specifically these two systems called OpenAI that everybody knows, and one that a little bit was less common called Dagster, which is a new ELT technology. And we can talk more about all this stuff, but basically, I saw a very compelling convergence of market demand and technology sort of come all at once, where people wanted to really understand their profitability on a more deep level, on a more actionable level, and the technology actually made it possible at that point in time. And so I moved on from Mad Rabbit very amicably. Still a huge cheerleader for the brand. It's going to do great. Everyone's gonna win on that one. But I wasn't a real founder of that business, right? And so I felt ready to kind of move on to my own journey, and I took the full-time plunge um, into Iris at the end of 2023. So it's still very fresh. We didn't even really come out of stealth mode until 5 weeks ago or so. But since we did announce it, the response has been resounding. My calendar is pretty brutal, but it's all with good things. So, I'm excited to dive in. I think I gained a pretty good understanding of how we were running Mad Rabbit, but what's even more interesting these days is being able to see dozens of brands and actually have a perfectly laid out financial operating system of these these companies. And so you start to see a lot of things that people are doing really well. You see a lot of things that people are doing a little bit less well. And I'm excited to have this conversation because I think part of the value that Iris can bring into the ecosystem is just helping people optimize in different areas. And so creating data sets that will help people do that is something that we're really, really focused on because there's a lot of low hanging fruit in a lot of these businesses, as I'm sure you've seen as well.
Yeah, probably with less clarity than you. I try to stay really financially connected to what's going on in businesses. I think about, I'm working with media buyers and creative folks to drive ad spend overwhelmingly. But I actually end up playing a role of like a advisor to the CEO across how they're thinking about their dollars in general. And so I end up getting into all kinds of parts of the business. And I think always trying to do that with an eye towards essentially enterprise value. Like at the end of the day, what everybody's trying to do is drive enterprise value of their business. That's what they really care about. They don't care about bid caps. They don't care about creative testing. They don't care about Opex per se. What they care about is creating a
Yeah.
valuable business. So like that is something that I think like, I'm sort of running everything through, but there's a level of detail and sophistication that I just don't have. It's just not my background. And so part of the reason I wanted to talk to you was I think that move from conversant with the D2C space, coaching some friends, running a brand internally yourself in the executive suite, and then going over to financial software founder suggests to me a viewpoint that I think is interesting, which is like, oh, you see a need in the market for this in even your limited experience. Now you see it even more because you're signing up brands for your software and all that. And that's like, man, I just want to go like, okay, what do you see? What am I missing? Probably without even knowing it for me and my clients. And then what are like people who are listening to or watching this? What are they missing financially? So like you mentioned one thing right away, which was like low hanging fruit for the goal of real actionability towards your profitability, right? Like, and so,
Yes.
I don't know if you want to start by just talking about like sort of the problem that Iris solves specifically, or maybe like what you see as like the core issues. Maybe let's start there. What is the low hanging fruit of, of that you could actionably attack around profitability? What are brands missing?
So I think like what brands really ultimately are missing is just like a centralized warehouse effectively for all their brands data that helps them understand financial performance on a real-time basis, right? So like and it kind of comes back to your point around enterprise value, right? So like from 2010 to 2022, all we did care about was ROAS and cost caps and all that shit because that's what created enterprise value. If you could grow revenue, your business was going to be valued on revenue, and you were going to create enterprise value that way. Since the end of really 21, I think is kind of like where the macro took a big turn, and now all of a sudden that enterprise is no longer derivative of revenue; it's actually derivative of free cash flow and EBITDA. And so what do you need to do in order to engineer your business in a way where it's going to be valued incrementally higher based off of how it's performing? Well, you need to understand profits. Okay. And so like there was all of this, and I really liked I forget, it was some podcast where they called it going from margin tech to or from marketing tech to margin tech.
Hmm.
And I think they totally I think it was Taylor Holiday and maybe Sean Frank totally nailed it. Like that's exactly like where the next wave is going to be. And so the problem that Iris is solving is that one, right? Because you need to understand as an ecom operator, like every single day is extraordinarily different, right? Like at Mad Rabbit, like our weekends could be double sometimes our weekdays. Okay. And so like are you making more money on those weekends when your revenue is double? Or are you making less money because you spend the same cost per click on Google and there's 100 more clicks and your contribution margin just gets destroyed by it? So basically, these modern consumer brands, every dollar that transacts in, on, and around the brand occurs digitally, right? Like you have even EDI integrations that feed into Walmart, Target, Sephora, whatever, like in the cloud. Your payroll is on the internet. Shopify and Amazon are most certainly on the internet. Like the data points are available. And so Iris is solving the data orchestration problem, which is centralizing all of those inputs and putting them, contextually in a way that helps you understand, hey, how are we doing? And then B, how do we plan to continue to do, good if it's good or better if it's bad? And so I think that's kind of like one of the main things that is differentiating about us and why I think, the response has been so powerful has really been around like actionability, right? So like there's this idea where like business intelligence tells you what's happening. I consider FP&A to be the plan based off of the business intelligence, right? And so we sit in sort of the FP&A stack where it's like, okay, let's see what's going on and then let's plan for either to continue what's going on if we like it or to change what's going on if we don't like it, kind of a thing.
You've heard me talk about More Staffing on here. They have particular expertise in the area of supply chain. They've built supply chains, especially in China, for lots of e-commerce businesses already, and they are putting together a webinar that is really going to help you that you do not want to miss. The webinar is called Transform Your E-commerce Supply Chain into a Revenue Stream, 5 saving strategies that deliver results in 3 months. And I'm serious when I tell you, I do not know better qualified supply chain experts to weigh into how you can make your supply chain more efficient and more profitable in your business than Laura Guevara, the CEO of More Staffing. So there is a link in the show notes to go register for that webinar. You do not want to miss it. Like, supply chains are way under optimized in e-commerce businesses consistently. People are on too long of terms. They're paying too much cash up front, and they're paying too much for their products in ways that are solvable. Laura and her team can help. Go sign up for that webinar. It is totally free, of course. Nothing like that going there. Go check it out. Link in the show notes to go register for that webinar. You are going to not want to miss it. What is rising to the top as you start to get brands into Iris and as you start to see all of these data points? What are the areas that you think brands are? I mean, you just gave the hypothetical example of a bunch of more Google clicks over the weekend. What do you think are the areas that immediately rise to the top where it's like these are financial mistakes that are like the biggest wastes of money in the business? Because ultimately, like, one of the best ways to make money is to lose less of it. And so, like, if we can just like shore that up, then you can go really, really far. And I think there's a lot of wasted dollars out there. I can think of a few, but I'm curious, like, what are the things as you get more and more data that is like, this is consistently a place where people are just spending money that they should not be spending, or I mean, the reverse could be true too, where they're not spending money they should be spending.
So I actually like the way that you phrase that. Like one of the best ways to make money is not to lose money. And I think like what a lot of people you'll see is like, so they're driving this ship, right? And for the most part, they're driving it pretty blind, right? And if your goal is to make, 10% profit every single day, and you start to go from 10 to 8 to -3 to -10, then all of a sudden you're so far off course. And like I think the biggest mistake that people make is like once you dip into the red is not identifying it immediately and making changes. So like we'll see people, and this is, Iris or not, but like, and we unfortunately made these mistakes at Mad Rabbit where it's like, no, just give the ad set a little bit more time, or like we're launching this creative, like just let it, let it learn. It's in the learning phase, like whatever, like all that bullshit. So like if you don't have the ability to understand the hour that your brand starts to lose money, you are doing it wrong. The technology exists today for you to be able to know that. And so once you know that, then you need to go and make changes. And the answer a lot of times is just to stop spending, right? So like there's a ton of pressure, back for the last 12 years or whatever, just to continue to grow month over month, year over year. You got to grow, you got to grow. People like you don't have to grow every single month, month over month, right? Like you obviously want to grow your business in a steady, sustainable manner. But once you start like kind of operating at like that marginal return that's like too expensive to continue to grow, you're just literally burning money. And like the capital markets, like to our earlier point around enterprise value, no longer reward that behavior. And like, yeah, like look, like 2021, like, yeah, fucking spend as much as you want and grow as much as you want. I don't care how much money you lose. Like you can sell for 5x sales and you're all good. Like these days, it's like you're not going to attract capital. You're not going to sustain yourself. You're just literally like torpedoing the business. And so the number one thing I think is like people being too willing to be in the red, contribution margin or net income basis. Like it's certainly, you should not be in the red on the net income basis. If you, like you want to basically understand like when am I starting to lose money? And as soon as I understand that, how do I change course to actually go and make money? And a lot of times the answer is just fucking stop spending, honestly. Like, you don't have like as long as you have some element of recurring revenue, like you're going to experience margin expansion in that sense. And like you don't really have to like force the growth. It's kind of like, the first thing that comes to mind as far as like day-to-day operational mistakes. And I think just to drill it home a little bit more is like that is where finance and marketing that happens the most often when finance and marketing are extremely disconnected inside of the brand. So once you connect finance and marketing, finance can basically be like, hey, you're being stupid, and then marketing can be like, okay, let's change course. So I think that's like the biggest thing. And candidly, like I'm saying it in a little biased sense because that's the biggest value prop for Iris as well. But like I truly believe that's like the number one thing that people get wrong is like just spending at the wrong level.
It's interesting. I mean, the answer then is overwhelmingly for people ad dollars. It's their ad dollars is where the waste is, and it's funny though because the well, I mean, you look like you're gonna maybe correct that.
Well, so no, no, I think ad dollars is one variable in a multivariable equation, right? So like the problem is that like the existing technologies within the ecosystem are not marrying the multiple variables, right? So like if you have a discount going on for Memorial Day, okay, well that changes our MER, in order as like break even or profitability or whatever, and that's why
People
looking
make
at
this
real.
mistake all the time. They don't change their targets despite that they're selling the product for less money and taking a thinner margin. I watch this happen constantly.
Yes, exactly. So like you have discounts, you have refunds, you have brand spend if you're not including that in like contribution margin, which is like silly. You have like all these different inputs, and people will just be like, okay, like 2.4x is my break even ROAS, and anything above that is profits, and it's like, okay, well then you strap on like a huge discount, and you're looking at like a gross MER, and it's like, well, no, like you're losing money, and now you're doing that stupid shit that I just said not to do, which is like you're going into the red and you're continuing to go into the red. And then you're not going to realize it until 3 weeks later when your accountant comes to you with the closed books for April and be like, dude, like you just completely missed on this entire P&L goal. Like you just botched this. And then you can only do that so many times before you die.
That's so right. I think the baseline mentality you're expressing here, which is just like hunt. It's what I hear you saying is hunt down wasted dollars in your business. I remember reading The Outsiders. Have you read that book?
Like the Pony Boy one?
No, 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 no. The other one. Yeah. There's
Oh,
a
that's the Greasers.
no.
No, I don't know the Outsiders.
No, The Outsiders is a Ponyboy one, but there's an Outsiders. It's like a
Oh,
profile of like overperforming CEOs. It's like who are the CEOs who, over the longest term, created like if you had given them $1 or $100, let's say, over the longest term, who would have maximized your return on $100 most consistently, as measured by by performance against public markets. So basically, there's like long CEOs who, over a long time, created really valuable companies over and over and over again. And one of the things that comes up, and it's like 10 profiles, great book, recommended. One of the things that comes up over and over and over again is that a lot of these CEOs and I was gonna say guys, that's all in that book. It's all guys and one female CEO because over a longer time period. So be it from the past. But the thing that comes up over and over is they're cheap. Like they just like they hated wasting money on like they were not flying around in PJs. They were not like you know
yeah.
creating super fancy offices and all this kind. At least in those days, like a lot of them just ended up like and it's basically that mentality, which is just like stop losing money. And I'm in the. I mean, I can speak from my experience, especially on the media buying side, which is like it is so tempting every time your ads are not getting the return you want to go just leave them on. We'll fix it. We'll like we gotta get some data back from our spend. That's kind of the cost of doing business. And people cannot deal with the idea that like actually all you're doing is making it go redder faster every time you do that. And
Yeah.
it is better to not spend the money than to lose more money, even if it means that you're going to have you're not going to be able to cover your Opex not this month. Well, look, if you spend into the red more, you're actually going to make that loss even bigger, not better. And so yeah, it's very hard. It requires a lot of discipline. Like I think what you need to do is build into Iris. Like a notification, but not a notification. It like makes your cell phone scream at you, just like bells go off and an alarm goes off on it. And it's just like, stop doing this as soon as you overspend by a
Yeah,
hundred
we
dollars,
we literally we literally have that. You can like set your parameters, and like if you like start to lose like X amount of dollars, you'll get a Slack message that'll be like, fucking stop.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's funny. Our friends at Pretty Boy, they told me that at one point, like they were overspending at the end of last year, and they were talking to Taylor Holiday about it. And Taylor was like, I don't know, I'm a little hazy on the exact details, but it was Taylor told him something like, "I'm going to stop responding to your DMs if you keep spending this money. You have to stop right now because you're losing money." Like he was like he just like basically threatened them. He's just like
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
well, it's like, yeah, that's, I mean, kudos to Taylor. It's like, dude, like, if you don't listen to me, I'm not gonna keep giving you fucking advice. And like, Ben eventually, I'm sure,
He
listened
did.
to
No,
him.
yeah, he did. They turned it around. It really
Yeah.
helped them. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. They got the warning and they did it, but it's so hard to do. And I'll tell you that the people listening to this who should be the most careful right now and like self-reflective is if you have raised outside capital. If you've bootstrapped, you tend, my experience with bootstrap founders is they tend to behave this way a little bit intuitively because they started with no money and it was their dollars, and so
Yeah.
there's like an ownership over it, and so they just hate wasting money. And actually sometimes with bootstrap founders I have to be like, hey, like you actually need to probably get a little more aggressive, put some more money into play. Like it's okay to like pay an influencer to give you some creative at some point,
Yeah, I think
but but people who have raised money, they have a very hard time, even if they're telling themselves, no, I'm going to make the switch later to profitability. I know I'm going to be valued on profitability. There's just something that happens where they have such a hard time going like the time to make that switch is now, like when it's time. And maybe it's not yet for them, but like if you've raised money, like you need it and you're not profitable now, you've at some point you have to be profitable or you die, and you will not be able to keep raising money. And so yeah, you have to be able to kind of pull that kill or hit that kill switch at some point.
yeah, I mean that's like I think you saw and you continue to see honestly. Carta came out. Carta puts out a lot of good data. I think his name's like Peter Walker. He's like the head of insights at Carta, which is like a cap table management software, and they've got a lot of great data around fundraising. And one of the things that's been like abundantly clear for at least a year, probably 18 months, is just the amount of down rounds that startups are facing, in general. And like look, like even if you get a down round, you should consider yourself pretty lucky. Like these
I
are
was gonna
total
say,
like pay to play cram down rounds, but like at least you get another shot. And the founders that especially in ecom, which a lot of investors right now won't touch with a 10-foot pole. You if you didn't change your course a year, 18 months ago, like you probably don't even own your business anymore if you raise capital. And it's like, and like I think what's nice about ecom though. What's nice is that you have so much agility day to day. You have so many levers to pull. You have so much control. And so I think the way that you framed it is correct. I would frame it even differently, which is like as long as you perform according to plan, it's okay. Like you just don't want to lose your
that's
plan.
right.
Like if you plan to spend $1 million a year on private jets and like you have 25 million of contribution margin, sure, like that's okay. Like I'm not telling people to like, hey, like don't take that client out or whatever. As much as like, okay, just make sure that like if you do, like how that fits into the grand scheme of the rest of your business.
I think that's really good, and it actually highlights something else that I think I see really good operators do is they plan really carefully, and they plan the entire P&L, and they budget the whole thing for exactly this reason. Because I was actually going to ask you this question, like there's almost like what seems to me to be a potential overcorrection happening now, which is like an optimization for profit so much that it actually becomes a little bit short term. That people behave like their business won't be here in a year, as if like the awareness that you drive now, the customers that you drive now, the word of mouth that you drive now, all
That's a
those
good point.
things, or like they also behave like getting clicks and awareness and customers and stuff now does nothing to make your Black Friday bigger or something like that. And so that's like the
Hmm.
trade off. Like I think most people probably are still in a place where they need to spend less bad dollars. I think that's probably true. But I think it's also
Yeah.
possible to start behaving this way and to be like, oh, sweet, we generated a really healthy bottom line, and you end the year with like $300,000 in bottom line in a really small business, all told. Now, look, I would be happy with that because I'm not trying to build that big of a business. But if you're trying to build a bigger business, at some point, you actually probably have to be a little bit more aggressive and think about the long term value that you're creating with some of these things. But again, to
Yeah.
your point, what I would say is follow a plan then. If that means raising money
Yeah.
to get from point A to point D or whatever, then you gotta have a plan on points B and C. It's not just spend into oblivion.
Yeah, and if it's raising money, that's part of it. Okay, like even if you don't want to raise money, like let's make a financial plan for the year. Let's be aggressive. Let's grow the business. Let's make sure that our balance sheet can support it, right? So that's like the other thing that people just completely fucking miss in this world because like look, they barely even know what a balance sheet is, and like I don't blame them for it. But like look, like you should have like a cash flow model. You should have like a balance sheet forecast. Like forecasting your P&L for the year does not take into account any sort of working capital. It doesn't take into account like any sort of like outside capital, right? In terms of like, cash from financing or something like that. And so it's like you can forecast a break even P&L all day, but like if you have like pretty poor capital efficiency, like on the balance sheet side, like you'll run out of money just as fast. So like, like you can be unprofitable, and if you have like a really well orchestrated cash cycle, you can go all fucking day and just grow and grow and grow and like pay off everything that you have with revenue. And like, I don't advise that because that only lasts so long, but like there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
And ironically, the balance comes in the balance sheet where like roll my eyes a little bit, but like you can do the P&L, you can do the cash flow statement, and you can say, hey, okay, I want to grow revenue this much, but that's going to make me burn this much money. Okay, and like, am I okay with that ending cash balance? Like, am I okay with ending the year with $500,000, $5 million in cash? And if so, what did I get out of losing X amount of dollars? Did I get 200% growth year over year? I don't know, maybe that's worth it. And then you just got to continue to model and continue to plan and continue to execute against plan, but you cannot do one portion of a financial plan because it is a very dangerous way. Because look, I mean, let's say you forecasted a P&L where you're growing from 500K a month at 10% EBITDA, and then you go from 500K to 5 million a month, but your EBITDA goes down. That could be awesome. That's a lot of fucking growth. That's a lot of inventory. That's a lot of working capital. That could kill you. Even though on the P&L, you're like, hey, look, I made 5% for the year on $20 million. Like I'm rich. No, like all your current assets are in inventory, and if your growth stops, you're completely screwed. And private equity will happily buy you for pennies on the dollar. So I think totally agree. I think it's very critical to understand the way that the balance sheet will look with growth, and people a lot of times will kind of neglect that.
The way that I've solved this for clients of mine increasingly is like they all already work off a 13-week cash flow. And then I, build them cohort forecast, and it really is beyond customers. It's like it's a full P&L forecast basically to try and look at where the contribution margin comes in at every month, where the bottom line comes in at every month. That allows you to see some like, hey, you think of a highly seasonal brand, like, yeah, we're going to lose money for 3 months, and you can see it, and you see if that's a plan,
Yep.
that's great. If the customers are whatever, then that can go, or it's just the cost, just the reality at an earlier stage of the business, it's harder to do it. And, for exactly the reasons you said, maybe you can't buy as much inventory as you'd like to make the moment as big as you could, or it's too risky or whatever. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of scenarios that play out. But then what I've just begun to do is literally just tie the two documents together so that in the same forecast, which gets updated, as often as possible, it's tied directly to a cash forecast. So the cohort forecast powers the P&L forecast, or that is a P&L forecast basically, and then it's just tied directly into here's the timing of the revenue that we're going to see in Shopify. Here's when it's going to hit our bank account, and then the actual operator can go in and enter in the cash movement from there.
Yeah,
Here's
and
where
like what you're
inventory is and
describing,
all that stuff, and here's where your credit cards come in,
what you're
etc.
describing, and what you're describing is like just like a classic three statement model. Like, I mean, that's
Absolutely.
literally how we do it. That's literally how we do it in banking. Like that's the correct way to do it. Like the cash flow model, the 13-week cash flow model that everybody talks about, it's a balance sheet model, right? Like it's an accounts receivable,
100%.
accounts payable. It's a working capital model, right? And so part of the inputs into working capital is accounts receivable, which we struggle to call it accounts receivable because it's outstanding for a day or two on Shopify, but like that's your accounts receivable model, right? That you are put for your clients. You put their accounts receivable model, and then the accounts payable model would be like taking shit out of build. Like Iris has a 13-week cash flow model, and we just pipe everything out of like your bill.com. We just plant it into the weekly outflows. And then we do the same thing where we're modeling like new customer acquisition and returning customer forecasts and plopping into their accounts receivable. So you're talking about like a monthly balance sheet model, and then you're just drilling down into it and you're having controls over every single in and out a dollar. And that's where the controls part of the financial infrastructure comes in, is like, okay, like every time we send a wire over 50 grand, like do we have like a double sign off on it, or like how do we make sure that like the cash is staying tight in the business? um yeah, I'm glad to hear that that's the way you do it, because that's exactly how
But it's
I would
hard,
do it.
and
It's
it takes a bunch of time and effort, and it's not what people think about. And almost nobody got into their businesses because that's what they love to do. Like, you are the exception here, Drew. Like,
correct.
you obviously love it, but like, people love their products. That's why they started. They designed something, they made something cool, they saw a gap in the market. And so it's actually, and which also means it's not just about building the document, it's about like learning carving a mental pathway that actually gets them thinking about what that means. So it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet, but it's like, okay, here's what we have to do, here's what the decisions
Yeah.
is, here's when to spend more, here's when to spend less, like all those things. And because it's step one is build the model, but then the next step that I've found also is can be challenging with clients sometimes, is to actually get them to go like, oh, this is actually the map and compass for the business, and if I want to get to where I'm trying to go, like, oh my gosh, I need to live and breathe off this document, so something, yeah. Anyway, making that easier for people and making that a little less to manage and a little less overwhelming feels like a giant win to me. Are
Yeah,
you
I
saying
like
that
the
the Iris? So go ahead.
I was just say I like the map and compass analogy. I always say when somebody shows me a financial model, or any finance person, a financial model, it looks like a bunch of numbers, but we see words, we see sentences. Like you can actually like depict like what, like this is a story, right? Like when I see a P&L that's with revenue going down and losses going up and cash going down, it's like, okay, well, there's a million different stories in here, right? Like we're losing margin, we're also losing working capital, like we're losing here and here. We probably ordered too much inventory, sales probably slowed down. Like there's you can really contextualize it in a lot of ways. So I like that analogy that you have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. A story versus just a set of numbers, but it becomes hard to think that way. I don't have a formal financial background. I don't have a formal statistical background. I just like thinking about the world that way. So it became intuitive to me in its own way. But I think like, but it also took like it takes a bunch of years to kind of get going that way. Let me actually move towards another thing, which is, by the way, I actually want to ask you about this, like a feature question. Does Iris actually forecast returning customer revenue off a cohort model for you? Are you saying?
Yeah.
That is awesome. So it actually takes your cohort
So
data
like,
and builds a forecast?
yeah, like it's part of like the revenue model, right? And like the revenue model being the accounts receivable model in the cash forecast. Like we take we have a unique identifier cohort for Amazon as well. So like you can model like Amazon retention like forecasts. So it's like, okay, like if I spend $100, how many customers does that get me on a new customer basis? That's a forecast for revenue. And the second component of revenue is like the returning customers. And so we have like a bunch of cohort data. I don't we don't try to compete with the likes of like Lifetimely or Peel. Like we're not trying to tell you like, hey, customer buys product A, they're 53% more likely to buy product B within 30 days. Like that's not the level of insight that we're interested in. All I care about is forecasting the top line revenue number. And in order to do that effectively, you do need like new customers and returning customers are really the two components. And then
Yeah.
wholesale is also a part of it,
Yeah.
but that's not really economic.
And you probably need a marketing calendar too, actually. That's the thing that's always really hard about automated forecasts is like I can affect that number if I go from 2 product releases a year to 5. And there's no way that in that case the future is fundamentally unlike the past. And that can be a real challenge, which is where I think the notion of like the marketing calendar powering a lot of the forecast is really important. It's also why I think the whole conversation I think that you and Taylor ended up on other sides of, which is like who owns the forecast, marketing or finance. It's like a
Yeah.
fun way to kick some ideas around on Twitter, but it's kind of dumb. I think like in the sense of like maybe you think I'm wrong, but I mean it's a fun framing, but it's like the answer is both. Obviously, like the answer is like you have to be
The answer
directly
was both,
connected.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah. The answer was probably both. I think like it starts with marketing. The forecast, no doubt, starts with marketing. If I was going to build somebody a financial model for the year of 2024, the first thing I would do is type in the ad spend as the input.
right. Yeah, that's exactly what I
My,
do. Yeah,
my, yeah. My opinion is that like I don't think it should come down to the CMO or whoever being like, this is the annual financial plan. So
fair.
I agree in some ways
Yeah,
and disagree in others.
yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think at some point the CMO it's another thing I think is happening is like in all the conversation towards increased financial sophistication. I actually was just talking to a bunch of meta reps. Like they just like had me for a Q&A and they were like, what is happening in e-commerce right now? What do you think brands want? And I said, well, like the big difference now from when I started 10 years ago is that it's like the level of financial sophistication is so much better. 10 years ago, we literally didn't talk about LTV. Like, it's like, we didn't know that customers, whoa, they make a second purchase. It's like crazy, it's just so ridiculous. So at that time, we were so green, but now there's like people like with building software and Final Loop and like whatever Taylor's content and whoever it is that's out there that's like doing different things to try to address these various elements of the financial structure of the business, and they're out there attempting to solve these financial problems for people because everybody knows that they need to get more sophisticated and smarter, and they also know they need to be profitable, and therefore like what's happening is that people are getting more knowledge at the same time. It is, I think, asking too much of CMOs to really
Way too
to
much.
to be the actual cash flow, like to deeply understand working capital. My opinion is in the early stages of a business, yeah, the CEO probably has to know that enough. They need to at least have a cash flow model to make sure they don't die. Uh, as soon as the
Yeah,
business gets any more complicated, and as soon as you add another channel, it becomes like almost impossible for a CMO to actually drive good marketing
I
and
totally
at the
agree.
same time,
Yeah.
have a extensive working knowledge of working capital.
It is. so much easier for a financial person to understand how CPMs and CTRs and ad spend and CACs and AOVs and stuff kind of work together, like to be dangerous on the ecom side than it is to like expect, someone to like be able to like run a creative team and then like turn around and like manage like a supply chain. It's like like
Completely agree.
I'm like dangerous on like the ad side. Like I know what I'm talking about, but like I could never like go in and like also like run like a creative operations team and like understand like the intricacies of like launching brand campaigns and how that's going to correspond with like the direct response efforts. Like that's a fucking career in itself. And that's 45% of the ecom P&L. So like candidly, like I don't even think the financial part is like really that it's not more important.
No.
I just think it's table stakes.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have it, then like all the stuff that like your marketing team is doing and all the efforts that you're doing are almost worthless. So like this is like the finance side of the house to me is just like you just have to have it. Like there is no like if ands or buts. And then you can worry about optimizing. Like we're just gonna keep the wheels on the bus. You guys gotta drive the bus.
Your meta ads tracking can be better, and Billy can do it for you. Billy is 100% server side tracking for your meta ads. You will get better event match quality, running ads with data quality like it is pre iOS 14.5. The way that I know this is that I'm running Billy as the pixel of choice on all of my clients' meta ads at this point, and it has been really, really good. We've seen serious improvement in event match quality in meta ads. We've also seen improvement in ROAS across the board every time we've tested this, including against other third-party pixels. It has been an obvious win. It's also incredibly well priced. Billy is not overpriced. It is the cheapest solution on the market that is going to give you better tracking with 100% server-side tracking, like I said. So go check out Billy.ai. It will make your meta ads better, and it will do so in the background without you having to do almost anything at all. It is just an absolute no-brainer if you're running meta ads, especially if you are working off of the native Shopify meta ads pixel integration. Go get Billy right now. Get better at tracking, better data so that your attribution is better in platform, the matching is better, the data that Meta gets is better, and you accomplish better results in your ad account. So let me ask you another question, tangentially related, about an area of the business that we really haven't talked about very much yet. But I am team D2C is a business model. I know many people are team D2C is not a business model; it's a channel. But I'm team, at least in some respect, D2C is a business model. And what I mean by that is that there are some particular ways in which that channel, which of course it is actually just a channel, but in which that channel creates certain possibilities for how to run your business that are unique to the channel in a way that is important to understand. And that's really all I care about with that. And one of those is that you can run a D2C business with an incredibly lean team because it scales so well against headcount. D2C
Yeah.
businesses can scale depending on the business well in terms of margin expansion with ad spend, but that really depends on a few things. They can scale. You get obviously some economy of scale in your supply chain, right? If you can order in larger quantities with your factory, you're going to get at the very least better terms, and very likely with enough scale, better terms and cheaper pricing. But it does not scale nearly as well as from a percentage standpoint on those elements as it does against headcount, where like I mean, I've talked to a business recently. I was talking to a guy the other day who's got a team of 3 full-time people and is maybe going to do $20 million this year and is going to do 5 on the bottom line or something like that. It's like, and they don't. I mean, they have some agencies and contractors and stuff like that, but they really don't have. I mean, it's just a very small team, and that works in ecom. Like they don't need to
Yeah.
add people. They could probably get to 40 doing that, to be honest. So I'm curious if you think one of the things I hear when I hear you say that like people are spending bad dollars is around the ad side. But I'm curious from your position if you think ecom businesses generally are good about this in terms of keeping a lean team, keeping lean overhead, or if they are, or for that matter, if you disagree with anything I just said, that then you should chime in there. But
No, I mean
but are they good at this? Is there waste in people's Opex? Like,
they're no, honestly, like you're right, and I don't think it's really even arguable just from like an operating leverage perspective, right? So like when I have now run like 2 companies. One was a CPG company, and this one is a software company. The software company is almost exclusively fixed costs, right? Like our gross margins in Iris are literally 95%. Um, the only form of margin expansion for us is revenue growth, correct? So our P&L is 90, call it 90% fixed costs. The That's a very high operating leverage, right? Because if we continue to grow and revenue outpaces expenses, we will, generate earnings very quickly. The literally opposite of that is consumer packaged goods or e-commerce or whatever, in the sense that you have variable expenses in your cost of goods sold that are half your P&L usually, and then you have another 30% of variable. So like now you're at 80% completely variable expenses before you even get into Opex. So like let's just say that like your Opex is 15%. That's 5% net income. So like definitionally, like in order for these brands to make money, they literally have to be lean on OpEx, like relatively, right? Because it's like, what does lean on OpEx mean compared to other business models? Without a doubt, it's probably the leanest, staff wise of a business model. Why is that? Because it's the highest variable cost structure of any model out there. And I think like a good example of this, what are the advantages and disadvantages to this? Um, a good example is Uber during the pandemic. So Uber has a very highly variable cost structure, and so when the pandemic hits and nobody in the world takes an Uber for 3 months, well, they're actually able to flex their costs down with that revenue, right? If Iris's revenue all goes away tomorrow, I still have, call it 150 grand of payroll I got to pay a month, right? So like that's kind of like the trade-off, right? Is like, theoretically a software business can generate, better margins by, creating better leverage. But we also are less resistant to downturns. And that's why you saw like a lot of these like, Series C unicorn companies just get fucking nuked because there's nowhere to go. Like you're just screwed. Because like if you make layoffs, if you lay off your entire engineering team, your
Your
product
product's
just
gone.
dies, and
Yeah,
then
right.
you're just screwed. Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't think I would fight anybody who would try to argue with you on that because that is objectively mathematically true.
Yeah, and well, part of what I mean is like how much margin is left. Like your example of 15% of margin getting eaten up in overhead. Like what I wonder is like how many brands could actually get down to 8%. Like could they actually think smarter about that and have actually a pretty good amount of margin expansion by doing that, or 10% or something like that. And I just don't know. Like I don't really see that many businesses. And I think most people have some sense of this kind of thing, that you need to keep OpEx pretty lean. But I actually, yeah, I kind of wonder if people could be leaner still, if they could think better still about this sort
You
of
should
thing.
check the report that we made with Wayflyer. We have like a best in class like OpEx benchmarks. Um,
Well, yeah, I'll link that in the show notes. It is a monster report. It's like 90 pages. I know you put a
Dude,
lot of time and
it
effort
literally
into
took
it.
me like it took me like 10 weeks to write that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Um,
It's really something. It's like, yeah, it's a really cool report. I will link it in the show notes, and people should definitely go check that out.
um, so like you can, I don't want to misquote it, but like you can, if you look in there, like we literally have that.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Yeah,
I think the lowest I've ever seen in terms of like OpEx on like a really scaled brand is probably like 6 or 8%.
yeah,
And those are usually brands that have grown so quickly in the last 6 or 12 months that they just haven't hired
yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Like I think like 10 to like 14% in like payroll specifically is what I'm referring to.
yeah,
There's also like rents
yeah,
and
yeah,
softwares and that stuff. Um, 10 to 14% is probably a pretty good benchmark
yeah,
for like an efficient team.
yeah,
Could you get down to 8? You'd be running on fumes, I think. Like,
yeah.
and it also just depends how much you pay people. Like,
Right.
and like, are we going to include like equity compensation in that? It's there's a lot of questions
Yeah.
that you can ask, but
I
um,
I this is my number one sponsor on the show, but one of the things, I've seen some recent conversation around this too, is this is also where like building remote teams, people just I think are under optimized around how good of talent there is in parts of the world where you can pay really good money, pay relative to local rates, get incredibly
oh my God,
experienced
like even in
people.
yeah,
Yeah.
even in for Iris, we have 5 onshore resources
Yeah.
that do development for us, which is like probably a lot for like a software company of our stage. But we use a Ukrainian for like junior development, a Ukrainian shop, and they are
Yep.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And they're happy to get paid. We pay them a lot,
Yeah.
but not as much as we would pay for 8 more people sitting in San Francisco.
Yep. And,
You
and
know, like,
once you're already a remote team, people, I just think this is an area where people are under optimized. Like if you are remote anyway, then there's just, in my opinion, very little reason not to consider it. You'll find incredibly high quality people you love to work with all over the place, who are really good.
100%.
And
If you're,
I'm not
if you're
saying, I'm
already
not talking
remote,
about
I agree.
exploiting people. Like pay them good local wages. You know, I'm not saying, oh, look, you can find $3 an hour talent. It's like that's not it at all. It's like
No, 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 no. Like,
it's just that like local, obviously the cost of living varies. And so once you have access to, as soon as you hire outside of it, I'm in California, as soon as I hire somebody outside of California, I might as well do it. And so I mean, people who listen to or
yeah,
watch the show.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And
I think there's
I
like,
think it's an under optimized place. I think it's where people ought to think from an earlier stage about that element of their business, about like that being part of the strategy of growth. If you're going to build a remote team, there's some real margin to get back there. And it's just the exact same conversation that we applied to the ad spend, which is like, you know, don't spend money you don't need to spend, so yeah.
yeah, 100%.
Okay, look, this has been really, really helpful. I want to do two things left. One is any rapid fire financial mistakes that is like top of your head stuff you think brands ought to just avoid, that you can just go lightning round quick on. What are the things you see that just like, hey, go look under these cushions in your business, or even if it's not looking under the cushions, it's like stop doing X. That would be one question, and then after that, I want to hear you talk a little bit more about exactly who Iris is for and why they should get it.
I think in terms of like what I see the most of and like what disappoints me and like breaks my heart every day is like when people don't have like a properly formatted accounting ledger. So like don't neglect your accounting. And don't like neglect your books, right? Because like without the books, like you don't understand what's going on unless you have Iris, we can tell you what's going on, but again, not a plug yet. Um, and then you need to do so have your freaking house straight, right? Like don't let some accountant charge you 4 grand a month to like shit all over your books every month. It's like completely useless. And then number two is like don't neglect your financial plan on an annual, monthly, weekly, and daily basis. E-commerce is a high velocity commerce sector. Shit changes every single day. If you do not understand what you want to happen and what will happen or what might happen, you will, unless you're, there's exceptions to the rule, but you need to understand, hey, tomorrow I want to do $10,000 in contribution margin. The next day I want to do 25,000. And then the day after that I want to do 30,000 because all of that's going to roll up into my monthly goal for the month, which is 200,000. And that's going to get me that 1/12 of the way to my annual goal. Like this is a step-by-step process. So I see so many people that show up to Iris and they're like, I don't have an accountant and I have no plan, but my ROAS is 2.5. And I am like, brother in Christ, like you need like so much help. Like I am but a measly software company. Like you need like people. So like,
Yeah.
and then like I think like this is like slightly unrelated to like the financial infrastructure side of things. I think like pricing is like kind of like pretty brutal for a lot of folks.
This is a great
Like
point.
if your gross margin is 35%, you
You're
either
dead.
A, like don't have a viable business model or B, like you're just underpriced. So like you can't operate, I don't feel, and this kind of goes back to your question around like is DTC like a business model or just a channel. I think it just depends on your gross margin. Like if you have enough margin to play around with CAC, then yeah, I mean it can be a business model. I don't think there's like a right answer to that question as much as like it just kind of depends, which is like a cop out. But for like food and beverage, like D2C is not a business model. For beauty companies, it certainly can be. Um, and like so financially speaking, like don't price your product like an idiot. Um, is probably like the third one, I guess, that I would kind of
I think it's
see.
really good. And then
You see
talk
like
about Iris a little bit.
they have like
What's
a
that?
52% gross margin. You're like, well, dude, what's the point of being a beauty brand if you have a 50% gross margin? Like,
Yeah,
like
right. If it's goop, you need to have more margin. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What about Iris? Tell people about. I mean, I completely agree with all that, and I actually have sometimes wondered. Just one more comment on that. If some people's what they think as they hear some of these conversations going around is a cash conversion cycle problem is actually not a cash conversion cycle problem. It's just a margin problem. Like they just don't have, and that's the actual issue in their business. And so like they can't spend enough on ads. They have to or they're overspending because like it's impossible to achieve a return that you would need at the margin that you have. And really, it's just all a margin problem.
Yeah.
And if you just had more margin, you could store a lot more inventory for a lot cheaper. So now that's easier said than done, right? Like it tends to be the case that the market will squeeze some of that out of different products and some of that.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that's actually an issue. So, okay, tell me about Iris a little bit more. Like just talk about who's like the ideal customer, what business stage, who's the ideal customer for Iris if they want to go check out getting more financial intelligence in their business.
So we have a pretty wide customer base right now. Um, I think, like ICP, like ideal customer profile wise, anyone doing 1 to 200 million is in really cross channels. It doesn't matter. Like Mad Rabbit was a very omni-channel brand, right? Like a lot of our business was Walmart, a lot of it was Amazon, a lot of it was Shopify. And I think a lot of the value in Iris is that we're, orchestrating all those siloed data points into like one central warehouse. And so we work amazingly for D2C brands because it's way easier to get all the data. But I think like where the value like becomes stronger and stronger is for brands that have an Amazon channel or have a wholesale partner or something like that. So basically, if you sell on just Shopify or just Amazon or just wholesale, Iris can serve you just as well as if you're selling across all three. And I think generally speaking, there's two milestones where I've sort of like felt people coming to us and really asking for help. Number one is sort of like the $1 million a year mark. So like you start doing 100K a month or something like that. And then like this kind of stuff becomes more important. Like if you're doing less than $1 million a year, I think like you just got to focus on like growing a little bit before you can even really worry about a lot of this stuff. And then once you're at 5 million, I think an Iris or something similar is just required. Like that's where the most businesses die, right? Is in between like 2 and 7 million. Like if you that's like the most critical part. Like that's where the POs start to get big. That's where the working capital starts to get burdensome. That's where the margins can start to get squeezed. It's like you're in real competition. You're a little bit you have legs. It's really required to understand all the things that we've talked about today. So I would say, 1 to 2. We have, Cody from Jones Road is like one of our biggest clients. They do, huge numbers. And then we have brands that are doing under $1 million a year just because they like to see they like to see the data. So it's extremely wide customer base. But I would say like if you sell consumer products on the internet or in store, like you are within our sweet spot.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, people can go check that out. Irisfinance.co. Is that right, Drew?
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Link is in the show notes for that. Just to be totally clear here, I have no affiliate relationship with Iris, so this was not a sponsored podcast episode. This
It
was
was not.
Drew's a smart guy building a cool thing, and I thought it would be helpful for people, and I think this was super helpful of a conversation. So so thanks, Drew, for taking the time and for building something really cool. I actually think one of the things I'm extremely bullish on e-commerce. I think it's a really good industry to be in. There's a lot of people who it's really easy to talk about the old days or really talk, CPMs used to be whatever. I am bullish on e-commerce. One of the reasons for that is because there's a level of intelligence that has grown a lot, and there's a lot of there's a lot of ways to get access to that intelligence. That includes communities, ECF Live or something, or ECF rather, you think of something like that, or Admission, or like, there's just like a bunch of different ways that you can get access to really smart people. Or even just like free on Twitter, and it's unbelievable. Still, there's a lot of really good stuff there. You have to sort through more noise now than you used to, but like there's still really good stuff there. Drew's tweeting. You should follow Drew as well, at Drew Fallon 12. Again, link is in the show notes there. But another reason I'm bullish on e-commerce is that actually is people like you building software into the ecosystem. I think the stuff actually does add value to businesses, and therefore makes the businesses better. It's not just taking margin away from e-commerce businesses. Is actually doing things that help businesses and makes them better, and that makes them grow, and that actually helps. And so you mentioned Lifetimely earlier. It's just like, man, for $100 a month, you could get a lot of intelligence about what's going on in the LTV in your business. That's $100 worth paying. You can make that money back really fast. And I think it's very possible that Iris is another player like that. And so anyway, I'm happy to have you on and hear about it, because I think this kind of stuff really makes people's businesses better, as long as you guys got to go deliver now on the promises that you've made, which is not up to me. That's up to you. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a pretty strong vendetta or whatever the right word is, motivation to be like, I love how Lifetime is like the best like value to price, and like I don't know, like we'll never be $100 a month. But
Sure.
like that sort of ethos really resounds with me, which is like just like if you're worth more than what you charge, like you will have a great business, you know.
Yes,
And
you
like
create
also like the
margin.
former merchant in me is like I don't want to pay a ton for software. So like
Right.
we're reasonably priced. Like I
Yeah.
think it's
Right.
like kind of a steal, honestly, which is like
Yeah.
also part of why like so many people are coming to us because like the alternatives are like 50 grand a year, 100 grand a year. Like we have, if you wanted to spin up a Tableau or some sort of like BI instance that would like give you this kind of stuff, you would spend 500,000 sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
All right, man. Thank you.
part of the
Appreciate
game.
it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.